Okay, so we are going to start with the respiratory system. Three main functions, and I kind of highlighted so you could see what was really important. The first one, we're going to provide structure for the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide. Essentially, what I'm saying is I've got the piping to get the oxygen in and the carbon dioxide out. It is also responsible for sound. The air is going to move over your vocal cords, which is going to produce that sound. And the third, the body will supply the cells and the tissues with oxygen it needs for metabolism and then relieve those cells of carbon dioxide. So I've got to bring the oxygen and carbon dioxide in and out. I've got to produce sound, and then I've got to get it to the cells and do that exchange at the cells also. Pulmonary ventilation is going to do just what it says. So pulmonary, lungs. Ventilation is going to move the air in and out. That's to ventilate. Okay, so I'm moving air in and out of the lungs. External respiration. External is going to tell me outside, but this is not what you think. This is going to take place inside of the lungs, but still has access to the outside, and that's where the outside comes from. It has access to the outside. So it's going to take place in the alveoli. And that's going to be between the alveoli and the capillaries. Capillaries, remember, are really, really small blood vessels on top of the alveoli. And the alveoli are those little grapes that you colored in on your coloring pages. Respiration gas transport. You're going to see oxygen and carbon dioxide get transported by the blood to the lungs, then out to the tissue and cells, then back to the lungs. And then internal respiration. So the cells are going to give me the hint that this is internal. So we've got to get the oxygen out of the cells and out of the blood and into the cells. And then breaking that down even more, once we get it to the cells, then that respiration is going to occur within the cells. This pathway you need to know. You need to know it in order, no word bank. So air comes in either through the mouth or the nose. Then it goes down the throat. You can use the word throat or you can use the word pharynx. I'd like you to use the word pharynx so it starts to become familiar to you. Pharynx just means throat, and we've already had that several times. Then it goes through the voice box or the larynx, then through the trachea or the windpipe. Then it branches into two tubes, two bronchial tubes, one going to the left, one going to the right. Those branches branch off into a whole bunch more branches called the bronchioli. At the end of the branches, you've got the alveoli, and then the capillaries are on top of that. So it literally looks like a tree. The trachea is the trunk. The bronchial tubes are the two main branches. The bronchioli are the little branches that come off the main branches. And at spring right now, you can see all the little buds on the tree, and that's going to be what the alveoli look like. So as we're looking at this main picture, you can see the diaphragm at the bottom, and you can see the lungs, the two bronchial tubes. See the bronchial tubes, one going to the left, one going to the right. The trachea here. I got the larynx or voice box. The pharynx is the throat, my mouth, my nose. You can really see here, here's my hard palate. Your palate is the roof of your mouth. See how there's bone there. It's hard there, but in the back of your mouth is called the soft palate. There's no bone back there. So hard's in the front, soft's in the back. Getting a closer look at that, again, you can see the palate here. The concha, you can see those inside of the nose. We're going to talk about those later. Here are my adenoids, and they talk about that when you excuse me, get a lot of ear infections, they take those adenoids out. This is the tonsils, like what you're used to seeing in your back of your throat. They will take those out if you have problems or if they get too large. And then here are the lingual tonsils. So we don't usually see these. You can see this in the back of your throat, and this one you don't see, but a lot of times the adenoids do come out if there's some problems. Couple pharynxes I want to point out that were back there. We have the nasopharynx, is where the nose and the throat meet. the oropharynx, where the mouth and the throat meet, and then the laryngopharynx, where the larynx and the throat meet. So when I breathe, when I swallow, I want you to notice this. Everything comes down, and here is the esophagus in back going to the stomach. Here is the trachea in front. This is the epiglottis, and I've told you about that. This is a little flap that will come down and block so that food cannot go into the trachea when I'm swallowing, and the tongue will help me trigger that. So that's going to help keep the food going to the esophagus, and it's open when I'm breathing. So if I try to breathe and talk and eat all at the same time, then I risk choking. You can see the thyroid here. Okay. This picture I put in, I wanted you to notice the difference in the lungs. See the 3 lobes of the lungs, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. See how much the heart takes up of this left side. Make sure you pay attention to, I'm looking at the lungs. So like when you're labeling your pictures, the right is the left and the left is the right. So pay attention to that. You should be able to see the difference between the size. One lung is bigger than the other. So branching, you see the bronchial tube comes in, it branches off just like a tree. At the end of the tree, here are my buds. Those buds are the alveoli. I told you they look kind of like grapes. And this is the only place where I'm going to be able to exchange oxygen and carbon dioxide. All the rest are just pipes, and that's really important to remember. In the alveoli, it's really, really thin, like tissue paper thin, and this is going to be where oxygen and carbon dioxide are exchanged. Exchange is only going to take place in the alveoli. It's going to be through diffusion. Oxygen is attached to the hemoglobin. It's called oxyhemoglobin. Carbon dioxide is going to be form a bicarbonate, but remember that diffusion, simple diffusion, is going to spread out till even. So I have a lot of oxygen in my lungs and a lot of carbon dioxide in my capillaries. And so they're going to exchange until they're about even. So what does that tell you? That tells you I still have carbon dioxide in my blood. I still have oxygen in my blood. Still have carbon dioxide and oxygen in my lungs. So that statement of, well, blood is blue till it hits oxygen. Always have oxygen in my lungs. Always have carbon dioxide in my lungs. Always have oxygen and carbon dioxide in my blood. So remember that. Surfactant covers the surface of the alveoli, just keeps it nice and slippery, keeps them soft. So this should look familiar to you. The heart, the low oxygenated blood comes into the heart, goes out to the lungs. We have that exchange, comes back to the heart, and then is shipped out to the body. Here it's showing my oxyhemoglobin and then my bicarbonate. So carbon dioxide is a bicarbonate and oxyhemoglobin is going to be my oxygen. That's how it's carried through the body. Big thing to remember, like I just said, the nose, the mouth, the trachea, or the throat, the trachea, the bronchial tubes, the bronchi, all of them are just pathways to get the air to the alveoli. When the air is going through the body, it is purified or cleaned, humidified or moisture added, and it is warmed. If you breathe through your mouth, this doesn't happen, and you'll feel like if you go out for a run or outside when it's really cold, your lungs kind of hurt because the air is too cold, and your body doesn't like that really cold. The point of the mucus inside your nose is to catch the incoming bacteria and debris. You have mucus inside the lungs that do the same thing. Inside the nose and inside the lungs, they actually have cilia or ciliated cells, and we looked at that at the start of the school year in chapter 3, that will move, the cilia will move the mucus so that it goes down into your stomach and you digest it. The nasal cavity is separated from the oral cavity by the palate. Hard and soft, we talked about that. You have a nasal septum wall fence that divides the nose in half. With the concha, those three projections. They increase the surface area to help catch any unwanted bacteria. Sinuses. You have frontal, sphenoid, ethmoid, and maxillary. So upper jaw, eyes, around the eyes, side of the head, forehead. Okay, all in that area. What's the point of that? To lighten the skull, to be a sounding board for speech. Like when you got a stuffy nose, sometimes it feels like things are echoing in your head because they're clogged. Moisten the air, produce mucus. Tonsils, we looked at those. I showed you the adenoids is the back of the nose. Um, the palatine are the tonsils that you know of at the back of your mouth and then at the back of the tongue. I showed you all of those. We talked about the epiglottis, that little flap, and then the glottis is the opening between the vocal cords. Trachea. If you need to look back at the picture, look back at the picture. You can go to Nearpod to do that. But those C-shaped rings on the trachea are made of hyaline cartilage. If you run your hand all through your neck area, you can feel each of those. So the trachea is in front, and you can feel each of those rings of the hyaline cartilage. Big thing, statement here. Smoking stops the movement of cilia, and that is really, really big. Why? Because that cilia's job is to help move that mucus out. So if I smoke and I can't do that, then I'm going to cough and cough and cough. And I'm going to have to cough it out. Where a normal person, the cilia is going to move it. So you notice that about smokers. They cough and they cough. Right lung divided into 3, left lung into 2, and it is smaller because of the heart. We looked at that. Big statement here. During puberty, in a male, the vocal cords are going to become larger, making the Adam's apple stick out. That's why males' Adam's apple stick out, because the vocal cords are larger. Right lung is going to be a little bit shorter because the liver is going to take up some of that place. And then we've got the pleura covering the lung, and then we've got the pleural fluid in there also.